Okay, in this video we will talk about the hepatic portal system. This hepatic portal system, it puts blood in liver. And what type of blood? This is deoxygenated. Now, why this system is special? In order to understand it, we need to understand the situation in the abdominal region. As you know, we have the small intestine, large intestine, we have the pancreas, the stomach, and the spleen. So food would come from outside the body, being digested, will go to the small intestine, will being absorbed to the blood, and also from the large intestine being absorbed to the blood. Now, the blood there, oxygenated blood, is delivered through something we'll call the superior mesenteric artery and inferior mesenteric artery. For the stomach, there is the gastric artery. For the spleen, there is the splenic artery. So all of those are delivering blood to those organs. Now we need to take that blood, deoxygenated blood. Now this deoxygenated blood here, it's deoxygenated, but it's full with nutrient. So this is nutritious blood. And those nutrients, they're coming from outside the body. And I can't just simply take them and put them in the systemic circulation because it could be toxins or it could be other materials that might be damaging. Therefore, we need to examine them. Need to be examined. And who's going to examine them and detoxify them or detoxify them is the liver. So if you remember, the liver function is to filter and detoxification. So now the system is taking that deoxygenated nutritious blood from the large intestine, small intestine, anything from the stomach, from the pancreas, from the spleen. If you remember, we talked about the spleen in the graveyard of red blood cells. We said like the heme group has to be sent to the liver, right? So all of this blood would go back to the liver. So how does it work? We have the superior and inferior mesenteric veins collecting blood from small and large intestines plus gastric vein plus splenic vein. Collectively, those are putting blood into the hepatic portal. And hepatic portal take it to the liver for filtration and detoxification. And from there, after that, it goes to the hepatic vein. And from the hepatic vein, it goes to the inferior vena cava. So those vessels, all of those veins, they don't put the blood into inferior vena cava directly. No, it has to go to the liver first. So this is the hepatic portal system. So see here, for example, this is the liver. Of course, this is the heart. This is the inferior vena cava. I will just hide the liver or maybe fade it. Okay, so this is the liver. Now here, this is the superior mesenteric vein. This is the inferior mesenteric vein. This one. Here is the splenic vein. Okay, the gastric vein should be around here. Maybe I hide it. But anyway, so the point is, I want you to see that this is the inferior mesenteric, superior mesenteric. See here, they are not putting blood into the vena cava. This is space, so they are not connected directly to the vena cava, right? But they are going into the liver through the hepatic portal vein. This is the hepatic portal vein. Now that blood will go to the liver, will get circulated, and then comes back into the inferior vena cava through the hepatic vein. There are like 3 hepatic veins, all of them, because the liver is big, so there are 3 hepatic veins. Okay, but all of them will perform the same function. They are putting filtered blood, nutritious, filled, deoxygenated, filtered blood into the inferior vena cava. Okay, you can access this website, humanbiodigital.com, from the useful websites in your canvas. Okay, so this was for the hepatic portal system. Okay, let's try to understand now the fetal circulation. And for the fetal circulation, we need to remember that the baby now is still in the uterus, surrounded by water, okay, which means lungs are not functional because there is no direct connection with the atmosphere, right? They cannot breathe. Those babies cannot breathe. So how do they get their oxygen? They get their oxygen and food from the mom. With the mom, the connection with the mom is called the placenta. So the mom is here. This is the blood coming from the mom, and the mom will take the waste as well. Okay, so the placenta contains umbilical vein and umbilical artery. Now, since we are bringing blood into the baby's heart, that blood, oxygenated blood, will come through the umbilical vein. So here we call it vein because it brings blood into the heart, right? So that's the umbilical vein. It carries what? It carries oxygenated blood. This umbilical vein goes to the liver through the liver and deliver blood to the inferior vena cava. This is the inferior vena cava. So now the inferior vena cava receives oxygenated blood. This is totally different than when we are born, okay? After birth, the inferior vena cava will carry deoxygenated, but in babies, it's carrying oxygenated blood. So this connection between the umbilical vein and the inferior vena cava, this connection is called the ductus venosus, and this is the second modification. Ductus venosus, that puts the blood from the umbilical vein into the inferior vena cava. Now this inferior vena cava will carry blood. We understand that the blood will go to the right atrium. So now the right atrium receives fresh blood, oxygenated blood. Okay, that blood goes to the right ventricle, and from there to the pulmonary trunk, then to the lungs, and from the lungs comes back with the pulmonary veins into the left atrium, into the left ventricle, and from there into the aorta. Okay, now if we continue with this pathway, then we will have a problem, because it means that the upper part of the body, or the lungs, mainly the lungs, will receive like plenty of oxygenated blood, and they will consume it, and that blood coming back to the rest of the body will be less oxygenated, so we will not have enough oxygen for all of the other parts of the body. Okay, again, this fresh blood is coming from the right atrium. If we continue from the right atrium, right ventricle, to the lungs, and from the lungs to the heart, and then to the rest of the body, it means that the lungs are going to receive highly oxygenated blood, and the rest of the body would receive less oxygenated blood. So how to avoid this? There are two modifications here. The first one is the foramen ovale. The foramen ovale, this is the third modification in the fetal circulation. This is a hole between left and right atria, and this allows the blood to move from right atrium to the left atrium without going to the ventricles, and this is critical. So now I'm taking some of that fresh blood directly into the left atrium, okay, which means more fresh blood will go to the rest of the body. So this is the third modification. Then that blood going to the left ventricle will go through the aorta, right, to the rest of the body. But what about this blood coming to the right ventricle? From the right ventricle, we understand it goes to the pulmonary trunk, and from there to the lungs. Now here, at the end of this pulmonary trunk, there is the fourth modification, which is the ductus arteriosus. The ductus arteriosus. Ductus arteriosus is a connection or a hole between pulmonary trunk and aorta. The pulmonary trunk and aorta. Why? For the same reason, to put more fresh blood for the rest of the body. Okay? So we bypass the lungs in two areas, in the foramen ovale and the ductus arteriosus. Okay? Now that blood will go to the rest of the body. The rest of the body will get their oxygen, and whatever deoxygenated blood has to go back to the mom. Deoxygenated and waste-filled blood has to go back to the mom. And how does it go back? It goes back through the umbilical arteries. Why do we call them arteries? Because they are taking blood away from the baby, from the heart of the baby. So that's the umbilical artery. Okay? So those are the 5 modifications of the fetal circulation. Umbilical vein, ductus venosus. We said this will put the blood from the umbilical vein into inferior vena cava. Then the foramen ovale between right and left atria. Then the ductus arteriosus between the pulmonary trunk and the aorta. And then the blood would go back to the mom through the umbilical artery. By the way, the foramen ovale, sometimes you will hear that babies are born with the hole in their heart. This one, foramen ovale, it has to close within, I think, several weeks after birth, but sometimes it does not, and they have to go through a surgery or something like to stitch it up. Okay, so that is for the fetal circulation, and that's the end of this chapter. Let me know if you have any questions.